On today's episode of Candidly with Coffee, I have a special guest. She is a dietitian with a bachelor's degree in nutrition and dietetics. She is a boss mama, a women's weight loss coach, and she has, had her own experience with weight gain, weight loss, and she's going to share it. She's sharing everything. And you guys, this was a great episode. She was extremely authentic, and I really enjoyed my discussion. It really just dives into the struggles that women go through with weight loss and weight gain and trying to figure out, what is going on. We leave nothing undiscussed in this episode, so it's going to be a good one. I'm really excited to share this conversation with you guys. So grab your coffee and let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Candidly with Coffee. You guys, I have a very special guest on today's podcast, and it is Lesya Holzapfel. Sorry if I butchered that, but it's a little bit of a tough one. But welcome, Lesya. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. So I know it's like my name is so complex. It's Lesya Holzapfel. So of
Lesya
course,
Holzapfel. There we
yeah,
go.
yeah. It's like
Lesya.
Ukrainian first name, German last name, just tongue twister.
Yeah. Whoa. It definitely is. I've been having my fair share of names to pronounce on this show lately, but I think I did your podcast a few years back, right?
You did. Yeah. You talked about macros. I was just thinking about it today. Like it's been a couple of years now.
Yeah. I think probably like at least 3.
Yeah.
And I'm still talking about macros.
You're still talking about macros?
So I wanted to have you on the show because you have quite a journey. Like I know we first connected through keto because we both had very keto focused accounts and we ended up kind of in the same circles in terms of keto. So I wanted to kind of like dive in to really your weight loss journey because I know, like myself, you lost a lot of weight initially, you gained during pregnancy. So you want to take us back to the beginning of like your weight loss journey.
Yeah. So the beginning, the beginning, because the beginning, 13, right? I've always been on a diet my entire life, but and like I actually went to college to be a dietitian because I thought if I did that, then I'd finally figure it out. But I was actually more confused when I graduated than I was when I got in because I was like, wait a minute, none of this really makes sense to me. So I've always been on a weight loss journey, but as far as finding keto and really changing and becoming into that like keto cult, drinking the keto Kool-Aid, that happened after my first daughter was born in 2015 because I had a girlfriend that did dirty keto at that time, and I would just see her losing weight like crazy, and I knew the way she did it was very unhealthy, but I was so desperate because I was cutting the calories and running 5 miles a day. I think I was just like totally under eating protein and under eating everything basically
Right.
while trying to breastfeed. And I couldn't lose the weight. And I was so desperate. So that I was like, okay, tell me how you're doing this keto thing. So I started keto and it worked. Like it worked. It was crazy. It worked so quickly. So I continued it. And it was kind of one of those things where I didn't know how to make it a lifestyle. It was like more of a temporary diet. I was very much still in the diet mentality back then. So I slowly kind of, went back to my old habits after I lost the weight and didn't really know how to make it sustainable. And I didn't gain all the weight back, but then I got pregnant again. And this was 2017. And I tried doing keto when I was pregnant, and all my body wanted was carbs. It was like, yeah, we're not doing the meats, or I just wanted carbs all day, every day. So I was like, okay, whatever. I'll just continue, I'll get back on it after my pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up gaining 60 pounds. I gained a lot of weight in that during that pregnancy. And I remember going to the hospital, like weighed myself before, and I was like 200 pounds. And then after the hospital, when I came back home, after I delivered this like almost 7 or 8 pound baby, I stepped on the scale and I was still 200 pounds. And I was so depressed. I was like, how is this possible? I gave birth to an almost 8-pound baby. It's like, I
I
had
can
so
so
much.
relate to that. Same with my son. I thought I was, everyone would tell me, oh, you're going to have such a big baby because I gained 100 pounds with my pregnancy. I mean, he's 26 now, so many years ago. And he was born 6 pounds. I was like, oh shit,
Mm,
this isn't good. And I was, I didn't lose very much weight. I think I lost maybe like 5 pounds when I came home from the hospital. I'm like, what? I could
yeah.
totally relate to that.
Well, there was a lot of inflammation in my body. Obviously, a lot of it was water that I was holding on to, but it was
Right.
just very depressing.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back home and like I knew immediately, I'm like, okay, I need to get back on keto, especially just because of the way that it reduces so much inflammation and water from your body. So I
Right.
did. And within, 8 months, I was able to lose that 60 pounds. I did it fairly quickly because I knew what I was doing at that point. Like I knew all the tricks of the trade and all the hacks. And so I kind of went on to be like, okay, how do I make this sustainable? So I dove into more of a holistic, clean keto approach. And it worked. It really did up until like end of 2019, beginning of 2020. Nothing to do with keto or COVID. Because people like, oh, you just like put on the COVID-19. I was like, no, I put on the COVID-50, but it had nothing to do with
Mm-hmm.
COVID. It was because of chronic stress and keto and just all of it hitting me at once.
Now, let me take it back a little bit. So, obviously, you had those journeys of those weight loss journeys. Keto worked for you. At what point did you make that a business and start helping people also utilize that same approach?
Yeah, so it was after my second daughter in
Okay.
2017. Everyone started asking me, when you like have girlfriends that lose a lot of
Of
weight, like,
course.
what are you doing? Tell me your diet. What are you eating? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone kept asking me because I lost it so quickly and they knew I was a nutritionist. They're like, tell me what you're doing. Like, and I just felt like I was just repeating myself like a broken
Mm-hmm.
record to everyone. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I had two kids at the, like, a baby and a toddler. And I was like, I don't have time to keep repeating myself. And I was like, I'm just going to start an Instagram page. It was called Keto Fit Mom Life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, OG. And I'm just going to share my recipes, my knowledge about keto. Because at this point, like I've read all the books, listened to all the podcasts, like I was full in it. I knew all the things. So I started an Instagram, just sharing recipes, sharing tips. And it grew really quickly because I would post these like keto day of eatings. Uh, and they would just like go viral because everyone
Yeah.
wanted, and I'd break it down into macros and stuff. And that's kind of like, so I started from there, and then from there I could kind of took it into like, okay, what do people need now? Like people wanted the recipes, so it's like I'll start a blog, and then I'll start a membership, and then the coaching, and it just kind of like escalated from there. But it was
Mm-hmm.
really after my second pregnancy, everyone kept asking me, and I was like, it was just like an outlet, and it turned into
Yeah.
a business, which was pretty wild.
Right. So then now you are doing keto and you're also helping people do this same approach. And then you get into like 2019, 2020 when something changes. And I want you to like explain like what happened during that period of time.
Honestly, it's almost like a Twilight Zone era of my life where I'm like looking back, I'm like, I don't remember. I remember, but I don't remember. I'm like, how did this happen? I feel like I woke up one day and I was like, who is this person? Like I looked in the mirror, I'm like, who is this person? What
Wow.
happened? I like there was signs when I'm looking back and thinking about red flags. There were so many. Just I mean, depression, exhaustion, cravings, couldn't sleep, anxiety, just on and off, just like all the things, all of the signs. And then the weight gain was very subtle, so I didn't notice it at first. Because a lot of people, like I'll share on YouTube why I quit keto, and YouTube, the haters are
Hmm.
like, how did you not notice that you were gaining weight on keto? I took you 50 pounds. I was like, Yeah. Yeah, it took me 50 pounds because it's not like I just woke up one day and here's was 50 pounds on my body. It was such a subtle, slow transition. And I was just like, okay, well, this is, normal, like all of these changes. And not to mention, I was so obsessed with just building a business and trying to manage like a household, raising
Right.
kids and building a business that I was like, I stopped weighing myself. I stopped, like, I was always in sweatpants, and I was just obsessed with the business and keeping my children alive that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even notice. And then one day it hit me, I think it was like at a 30 pound mark or whatever, that I'm like, holy crap, what just happened? And then that's when I started to notice all those other signs of like the hormones. Like my hormones were all
Mm-hmm.
out of whack, and like they were red flags, but I didn't pay attention to them until the weight gain was like so
Undeniable.
massive. Yes. That I
Right.
was like, okay, there's something here that's
Now,
not
did you
working.
have a struggle? And I can relate, as a coach, we're both coaches, we both help women with weight loss. Did you have a struggle with the fact that here you are, a coach, and you're like having a moment of, oh no, how do I address this? Because I feel like a fraud? Or not that you are, because I can relate to this so much because I went through a similar experience with my menopause last year. So do you have this moment like, when do I come clean? How I got to fix this before I'm exposed? Or like, I want you to take me through some of those feelings because I know that must have been challenging.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I still kind of feel that way because I'm still not back where I was. I've lost like 30, 35, 40 of it. I'm still not back. And of course, being in the fitness space, especially with Instagram, it's like people pay attention to how you look, and there's this like expectation that you have to look a certain way or else you are. For like, I did feel like, who would want to listen to me about weight loss if I like am overweight, right? Because I knew I
Hmm.
was overweight. But then there was also a part of me is like, well, that's also very selfish because I'm getting amazing results from my clients and my program works. I'm just
Right.
going through my own personal journey right now. But I was
Right.
very open about it to my
Hmm.
clients, to my like, like wasn't like talking about it all the time on social media. I mean, it took me a while to share it on social media, but with my clients, like they knew the struggle I was going with, like with that intimate group, like they were quite aware, and I was very open about that. I'm sharing everything that I'm doing, that I have gained weight. It took me a while to kind of start talking about carb cycling because it was that transition from being this keto expert and this keto person, and now I'm talking about carbs. So that took a
Hmm.
while, which is why I kept it kind of hidden, and I was just experimenting with a group of women before I went public with that, because I was like, I need to see if this works. Worked for me, I need to like test it out. But it
Right.
was, I mean, I still get those feelings of like, you know, especially looking back at my old YouTube videos, and I was like, but that's also very selfish, because if you have a message to share, if you have knowledge, if you know that you can bring value to people, it's like
Hmm.
there's people that are not going to care that you don't weigh, 120 pounds and you have six
Right.
pack abs if you can bring value to their life. So it
No,
was like
you're
this
right.
constant struggle between that. But I absolutely felt that, and I still do feel that way.
Hmm. There's value in experience though. So having gone through that, now another notch in your belt on something that you have gone through and you're going through, where that's all knowledge that you can bring to your clients, rather than, if you were some fit mom, in your size 2 Lululemons and you never had an issue, it's not as relatable, So I think that a lot of women can relate. And what I love about you, and I know it must have been a struggle, is that your authenticity. And I know it took you probably some time to come forward with it. But when you did, I
Mhm.
thought, this girl has some balls, because it's not easy. It's not easy. And I know, because I've been in those shoes. I've had those moments where, it wasn't as significant of a weight gain for me, but it's only because I identified it pretty quickly. But I gained 15 pounds in the course of like just a couple of months. And even when I stepped on the scale, I thought, oh my first instinct was, oh my God, I got to lose this before anybody finds out, because otherwise I'm such a phony and a fraud. And I preach, like, if you're on macros and you're this and that, menopause doesn't matter. And here I am, I gained 15 pounds when I blink my eyes.
Mhm.
So I can relate to that. And I just applaud you, because that must have been scary to come out like on YouTube. And did you get any haters and trolls and backlash when you came out with that?
I'm at the point where I just like went all in on YouTube last year, so my following isn't as big. I mean, it's growing, and like I love YouTube, so I was at the point where like it wasn't as massive to get a lot of hate, but there was There was this one client that like said something about, it was funny. She commented like, "Oh, well, thank you for finally coming clean about this. Finally, somebody's being honest in this space, and I hope this is a turn for the market of honesty. You know, it would make sense for you to refund all the money that are your clients spent on your program." I'm like, me sharing my personal story of weight gain and what I went through has nothing to do with the results that I can get my clients, because I can get my clients results. My
Right.
program is my program. My methodology is my methodology. What I go through personally, my struggles, my journey, those two are separate. Yes,
Hmm.
of course. Am I gonna be like, eating McDonald's every day and then be like, here, eat protein, but I'm eating,
Right.
McDonald's junk food, but don't eat junk food. Of course, that's like hypocritical, but it's not that I was doing that. I just had all of
Hmm.
these other things going on in my life, and it was very, very hard for me to like share that, because first of all, I almost felt like I was just like hiding, right? There was like a
Hmm.
year or two that I was basically hiding, but I knew people would notice. Like, you have to be on video, you have to be, it's social media, having an online business, you have to show your face. And I'm like, people aren't stupid. I know you could
Hmm.
tell that I gained weight. But I was just not ready to share it yet, because
Hmm.
they say like, don't share your story while you're in the middle of it struggling. And you're like, "Oh, I didn't want pity, like, oh, pity, Lesya, she gained
Yeah.
weight on keto." It was like, "Okay, let me figure out, like, how to get to the other side, or at least go over the hump." And then now I'm,
100%.
like, over it, and now I know the journey back, and now I'm ready to share, like, "Everybody else that's on that side, come over here. I got a solution," rather than like, "Oh, look at me, I gained 50 pounds. I don't know what to do."
Yeah. No, for sure. I felt the same way. In fact, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks after I weighed in, I had to kind of like get myself together, figure out what was going on with me before I was ready to like speak about it. And even so, I go back and look at some of the YouTube videos I did during the time when I was like in menopause, but didn't realize I was gaining weight, but I wasn't weighing myself. And I even said, but I haven't gained weight, thank goodness, but I am feeling this and that and this. And I'm like, I was a damn liar. I had definitely gained weight. I can watch those videos and see the weight gain, but you don't see it. Hindsight is 2020.
Mhm.
Like I can definitely sympathize with you on feeling like you just woke up one day, you're like, oh my gosh, how did I let this happen? Because I mean, that's happened a few times in my life. And but to finally take that step and to share it is just something that most people don't do, to be honest. I see it in the space all the time. Authenticity shows, and I feel, and that's why I reached out to you, because I've always just felt like you are just very authentic person. Whether you shared it right away or not is not the point. The point is like I just always have felt your authenticity, and knowing how hard it is to come clean with something like that on social media. I was just very impressed and proud because we're all in the same space together, and I'm like, no, that's, I'm sure your clients were, it helped them that you shared them, that you were super honest with them and shared. They probably felt more connected to you because you know what it's like.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure on people in our space. Like, we being in the nutrition health space, there's so much pressure to look a certain way, and guilt, and like everyone's like watching us. Like, what is she eating?
Yeah.
What is she doing? Oh, you look like you gained a little weight. Or like there's just like, what? Like, can I just live? What is
Hmm.
with these standards of how it should be? Like, menopause happens, life happens, hormones happen. Like, we go through things, as long as we could get back, or we're not just like giving up on ourselves and just throw in the towel or disappear. I think that, who cares? Like, this is all part of the life's journey, and there's a lot of pressure and expectation, and it kind of sucks. And and it's like, everyone's just so, they're just like a-holes online. Like, people,
They
like,
are.
sometimes they're just, so I'm like, you know what? I've always wanted to be I've always, my brand has always been about being authentic and real. Like, from day
Hmm.
one, I always said it the way it was. And I felt like that point of my life, it was really hard for me to do that, because I felt so much guilt and shame. But I knew one day that I would be able to do that. and it just took a little bit. It took a couple of
Mhm.
years for me to figure it out, but
Mhm.
I just feel that when like people know, like people can tell when someone's not being authentic, which is
Mhm.
why like with me, like the way that I view social media, I know most of it's all fake. And I know like behind the scenes, everyone's got a hot mess going on. So,
Mhm.
you know, coming with that perspective, it's like we're all hot messes. We're all hot
Yeah,
messes
we
and
are.
stresses. So why not just like have empathy for people? So yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. That means a lot. It was definitely hard, but I knew it was what I needed to do to move forward.
So now, what? Take me through your journey of figuring it out and kind of getting over that hump. Like, what did that look like for you?
It was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of going back to things that I thought were true that weren't. So, like I said before, I drink the keto Kool-Aid and I thought that keto was the only way to lose weight and keep it off and like cutting carbs and and all that BS. And it was like I was fighting against myself because I started diving into research. I had my cortisol was a mess, and I got all the tests. I kind of like I went and got the Dutch test done and the gut test, and I just I saw the numbers that my cortisol was high and my progesterone was tanked and all the things. And I did research about that, and a lot of things that came up was like reintroducing carbs to specific times a day, helping bring that cortisol down, increase serotonin, all the things. And I
Mhm.
like had a hard time with that. It was a very much all or nothing back and forth. I had
Mhm.
extreme carbophobia. I was scared of eating carbs. And so it took me a long time to like, it was like I'd go have some carbs and then I'd freak out and go back to keto. Go have some
Right.
carbs, freak out, especially if you see the scale go up because carbs hold on to water. So, of course, it's
Yep.
going to show up on the scale. You know, you feel a little more puffy, inflamed. I mean, at that point, I was so glucose intolerant from not having carbs for so many years, my body forgot even how to process them. So
Yeah.
it was very much like a year of going back and forth, and then finally just deciding that I need to do this. And there's like I'd done keto, went back to keto so many times, I could not lose the weight. It would not budge. It was like for
Mhm.
2 years straight, the weight wouldn't, it kept on increasing and I couldn't lose a single pound. So that's when I'm like, okay, obviously this doesn't work for me anymore. I need to accept that and move on and transition. And I just like made a decision. I'm like, I'm just gonna do it and stop weighing myself. And
Mhm.
slowly, I just slowly started introducing carbs. I think the hard thing is like when people come from keto and then they dive into carbs, all the carbs head first. That's when they get in trouble. And they very much all or nothing because your brain, like, you freak out, the weight gain, all of that. So I just kind of slowly transitioned and titrated them up, and that really helped me.
So let me just back up a little bit because I want to make it clear because I think people always get confused in terms of when we bring in cortisol and adrenal fatigue and all that stuff. But during the course of when the weight was creeping up, were you eating more because of the cortisol? Like, were your cravings out of control? And so maybe like when you had like a weekend, were you eating more or did you not notice an increase in your actual intake?
So I'm sure I was at points. I'm sure I was. There was a lot of definitely cravings, but to say that I was like always stress eating, no. To say that I was like all of a sudden like binging on all this like junk food and sugar and all of that. No, like actually for most of the time, because that was what was crazy for me, that most of the time I was sticking to a clean keto way of eating. Like, but I did, if I could go back and think about it, I do remember it was much harder to stick to clean keto. And there were times that my cravings were so bad that I would give in to things that I
Hmm.
didn't eat when I was strict keto. So, of course, I
Right.
can't say, oh no, I didn't eat a single bad thing. I was always clean keto and counting macros. Of course not, because one of the like signs and symptoms of extra cortisol is you have these crazy cravings for carbs and sugar, you know?
Exactly.
But to say that that's the only reason why I gained weight, that would not be true because I was
Hmm.
still working out. I was still eating a healthy diet. It's not that I was like all of a sudden eating thousands of calories and more. Actually, there was sometimes that I was like under eating still during this
Mhm.
process. But of
Mhm.
course, yes, there was cravings, and yes, it was harder to stick to that clean keto way of eating during this time.
So so what did you do, like, specifically, what did you start to do that started to work, where you saw the scale start to kinda climb down, or you felt like you were starting to lose and get in the right direction?
Yeah. So obviously the first thing is giving up strict keto and just deciding that this is no longer for me, the strict keto
Incorporating
way
the
of
carbs.
living. Yeah. So
Mhm.
kind of having to do a lot of mindset work on that carbs don't make me fat, that keto is not the only way to lose weight. So I started just slowly titrating back healthy carbs during specific times a day. So I would start at night, kind of before bed, because that's kind of when, my cortisol tended to be super high in the morning, like super high
Mhm.
at night. It was like all out of whack. And so they would
Mhm.
it would calm down my cortisol and raise serotonin. So I started like adding in carbs just like for dinner. And then
Mhm.
I did like a lot of supplements, I did a lot of research on things to kind of help me in a holistic way. So
Right.
supplementation and really being careful with the coffee, because I would just like wake up on an empty stomach, drink coffee, and then wouldn't eat anything till like 2. I mean, it was just a
It's the
disaster.
mom diet. That's the mom life.
Seriously, coffee in the day, in the morning, and wine at night. Like
Yeah.
this was my life. Like literally in the
Yeah.
car, and then at night I needed wine to like chill the f out. It was just a vicious cycle.
Mhm.
So I switched that up and started just slowly cycling, like carb cycling. And
Mhm.
so I would do it at night, and then I started doing it around like the luteal phase of my period. And I just started experimenting with that. Like there's just so many ways to do it. And then I would do it
Mhm.
around my workouts because I started getting back into lifting. Because there was a point like I couldn't even run a mile. I would like die.
Wow.
It was That's when I knew, because I used to be a runner. I used to be a marathon runner. Like I have so many medals in my gym. I could not run a mile. I like had to stop
Wow.
a million times. That was like such a huge red flag to me, like how burnt out my body was and how exhausted my body was, and my nervous system was just like it was crazy. So
Yeah.
and then I just started getting comfortable about like, okay, I'm fine. I'm not gaining weight. At first, I just kind of stayed stable and I wasn't really losing anything. But then when I started to really prioritize my protein and really start implementing other habits to help me with the stress and, being careful with the coffee and limiting the alcohol, and then upping the carbs, and then like with that came like my hunger signals became more regulated, because before I felt like I didn't know, like I was hungry all the time. I was always thinking about food, and then I could never eat enough, but then I felt bad so I didn't eat. And then slowly
Yeah.
starting to make these changes, my hormones and leptin and ghrelin started to kind of like regulate themselves out. And that's when I noticed that I started to drop the weight.
That's huge. That's huge. And I love that because you're addressing like the root cause rather than putting a band-aids on things, because you cannot ignore those things. You cannot ignore cortisol and your satiety cues and your ghrelin and leptin. You have to, fix those things, or else it's going to be impossible to follow any sort of protocol, because those things will take over. They're very strong.
Oh yeah. Cortisol is a strong bitch. And I like don't want to hate on her because she has her role, for emergency purposes. But if you get on her bad side, oh, I pissed that girl off. And she was
Exactly.
like, "Nope, it's gonna take more than all these your little tricks." And it took me, I mean, it was like I said, 2, 3 years. I like started losing weight again last year in the middle of the year. So 2, 3 years of doing this
Mhm.
and like slowly making the changes, and I'm still not there, but I'm like, so this is why, little side vent. This is why it makes me so mad when I go on Instagram and I see all these cortisol coaches advertising their cortisol coffee. Like, I dropped 14 pounds in 7 weeks drinking this, because I'm like, the work that I have done and am still doing to help heal my cortisol and regulate that. And then people are like lying to these women that are suffering. Like, no, it
I
doesn't
had
work that
someone
way.
DM me recently about that. What do you think about that? And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Please. I
I
can't.
saw it just, my random bathroom scrolling, and it was on my Explorer feed. I'm like, this has to be a joke, right? And then I looked at it, and then something else came up of like identical. I posted a reel about it. I usually like let things go. I'm like, whatever, people can
Mhm.
do what they want to do. I couldn't with the cortisol just because I know my personal journey, how hard it's been, how much goes into it,
Exactly.
how much like the struggle and the journey and like what it takes to actually regulate cortisol. That
Right.
it just made me so mad, and then I noticed that, like, it's like an MLM thing because, like, there's other accounts that call themselves cortisol coaches, and they're literally posting the same reels, the same audio, the same text, saying the same thing, trying to sell this cortisol coffee BS, and I'm
Oh
just
my
like, "I'm sorry. I just can't, like, not say anything about this because it's BS."
And no, it's so hard in our space because we have to answer to the stupidest things sometimes, because our clients are saying, "Well, what about this? What do you think of this?" And I'm like, "Just no, no, just no." It's
Immediately no.
hard because I get angry because there's not everybody is like an ethical coach out there, and so, but the ones that aren't ethical have the flashy message, the one that's so sexy that people want to stand behind because they're like, wow, that sounds like what I want it. I'd love to lose 30 pounds in 30 days and whatever, it may be. And so ours isn't as sexy if it's real, like
Yeah.
reality. Reality is it takes time. Reality is we're going to have to figure it out. Everybody's different. There's no answer, one answer for everybody. Let's work on it. That's reality.
Mhm.
Going through that, even though I know it wasn't fun, but it's given you so much like value that you can give it's like there's purpose in your pain, because there's one thing of knowing something and learning about something in school, but to go through it and to be able to share that with your followers and your clients is it just a totally different perspective, and they just put so much more like trust in you, and also just knowing that you know what it's like.
Yeah, like I always say, like I've lost weight, I gained it, only to lose it again, only to gain it again, and the cycle continues. And hey, it might happen again, right? I
Yep,
can't
same,
say that it
sister,
won't.
same.
But it's through that journey. And yeah, is it awesome? The people that always stay consistent, the women that like menopause doesn't affect them. Nothing affects them. I have a friend like that. Nothing affects her. She's always like 4%
Yeah,
body fat and super ripped and lean. And that's awesome. But I also feel that it is harder for her to relate and resonate with women that yo-yo up and down that had a weight story because like, I know what it's like. I've lived in the shoes. I know what it's like looking at the closet and like crying because nothing fits.
yeah,
You're like, who
yeah,
am I in my body? And so I can relate and I can empathize with that. And then I also know that there's a way out and that it's not
right.
forever, you know?
That's
And
that's
so
huge. And now that's what I want to get into. So tell me about your program. So obviously you've restructured probably some things based on the what your experience is and what you've went through. So what are you helping women with now? What's your program like?
yeah. So I've kind of given up. I had a keto program and I no longer sell that straight keto program. Now it's a carb cycling protocol. So it really focuses on carb cycling and metabolic flexibility. So kind of what I learned from this whole experience is that the best way isn't keto, isn't all carbs. It's like in the middle. It's that
Mm-hmm.
balance. It's that
Yeah.
flexible metabolism that can rely on, that could switch fuel sources, that doesn't need to rely on just fat or glucose. And
Yeah,
that's
I love
the sweet
that.
spot. That's like the golden ticket, right? To be able to eat carbs and not lose weight and use them for energy, be able to eat fat and more low carb on days that you don't need that much energy and use ketones as fuel and run on those. Like, why can't we have both? So that's kind of what my program now focuses, is finding that metabolic flexibility, creating that resilient, efficient metabolism. And sometimes it takes women longer, women like me that have adrenal or cortisol issues or thyroid issues. And sometimes it's just a woman who like wants to wean off of keto or menopause.
I love that because I think that's such a good approach, that more balanced approach, and having your body so efficient that it can use multiple fuel sources. I mean, that's ideal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's the way that I teach carb cycling, I have 10 different protocols because I don't believe it's a one size fits all. So there's somebody like in menopause that they need to do it this way to be successful. Somebody that just needs to wean off of keto, they can't go like dive first head on into carbs. We need to titrate them slowly, titrate the carbs up while we're titrating the fat down. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
that's doing adrenals, they have to cycle daily. And someone that just
Mm-hmm.
wants fat loss, it's just a couple days a week. And then
Mm-hmm.
somebody that's like a wants to put on muscle, they want to do it around their workout. So like it's very customized because every woman has a different need and different goals. So that's kind of how I structure it. And I still believe in the power of keto, and keto still
Mm-hmm.
has a space and it's still a tool. And we don't give up like completely on having low carb days and moments, but it's that flexibility, that resilient metabolism that's able to switch back and forth. That's what I believe now is the gold standard to
Yeah.
ideal health and fitness, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'd have to agree with you. And my whole perspective on different programs and things like that is whatever works for you, like that's why I have my ways that I've had for years, but I am not closed-minded to the fact that my program is not for everybody. Macro tracking is not for everybody, keto is not for everybody. And that's why on my show, I want to showcase the different ways that people have found success, because my goal is I want the women out there who struggle to find someone and connect with someone that's going to be able to help them. And maybe this is their gold ticket to looking and feeling, most important, feeling their best. And that's why, I wanted you to come on the show, because I don't know a lot about carb cycling. I don't practice it, but I absolutely, you have had success and you have clients that have had success. So there's something there, and so that's why I think more people need to hear about it if, they're struggling and they are having issues similar to what you had and nothing has worked. Macro tracking doesn't work. Keto doesn't work. Maybe this is the answer for them.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I always say that I'm like, all the programs work and then none of them work. It's
I love
what
that.
works for you at what season of life you're at.
Exactly.
Because keto worked for me in one season and didn't this. Macros worked to me one season. Now as a busy mom, I'm just like, don't want to do it, right?
Yeah.
It does not
Yeah.
that it doesn't work. So it's finding what works for you in the
Yeah.
season of life that you're in right now.
I love that because it's so true. And, as a coach, you have to drop your ego sometimes and be like, well, maybe that works for you. That's great. That's not the way I do things. But most importantly is for people to find what works for them. And like what you said, in the season that it works for them in, because that changes. I was keto once before too. And I still to this day get a DM that says, wait a minute, you're eating bread? Aren't you keto? I'm like, are you kidding me? It's been 4 years since I have practiced the keto diet. I'll never shake it.
That's hilarious. I know, right? There's
It's,
just way too much content out there with
I know,
keto.
I know.
Same
And I didn't
here.
remove it. I remember
Yeah.
I had to do something similar to you back in the day when I knew it was going to be a thing. So I had to transition off of keto. I came out and I did the same thing on YouTube, why I quit keto. So and it still holds true why I quit. And I just refer people to that video if they have a question. Well, first of all, my name was never Keto Janine. So why do
Right.
you still remember me as the keto girl?
Right. Right. My name was Keto Fit Mom Life, but then I changed it. But I agree. It's like it's keto is just like become not just a diet. It's like this movement and almost cultish, very dogmatic. And it's like the diet itself did nothing wrong, but people have turned it into this like, oh, keto. Well, you're not
Yeah, well,
keto.
yeah, just like with everything, I feel like people they glommed on to the things that were not the good parts of keto. The whole, I can eat, all the fats and all this stuff, and that's not keto. Actually, what you're doing, that's just you're using keto as an excuse to overconsume a bunch of dirty food, as long as you don't eat carbs. So that's why I kind of separated myself. I didn't like that environment. But anyways, it's neither here nor there. But the key is, like you said, I think it's important for people to be open to, because there is a solution out there for you. And it's important that you connect with the right coach that's going to help you. Coaches are necessary. I'm
Mhm.
1,000% on board with coaching. People need help, they need accountability, they need knowledge, finding a coach you resonate with, so if why don't you tell everyone like how they could reach out for help and
Yeah.
get on your program?
So my Instagram, I'm on Instagram, my name at Lesya Holzapfel. I'm not gonna try to spell it. I'm sure you could put it in the description. But
Mhm.
I do have a carb cycling cheat sheet. So that's kind of a good way to get started, to kind of dip your toes in to see if you like it, if you like the process. There's nothing, you can't hurt to try. So I'm sure
Right.
you can leave that link to that cheat sheet, and it just kind of goes
Sure.
over like what it looks like, how to start carb cycling, what's it for, the different ways to do it. But really, it's like a matter of, okay, is this sound something like I can do? Because if you're like, oh, no, I don't want to do this, but like, everyone else is doing it, let me do it. Don't do that for that reason. Like, does this resonate with your lifestyle? Something that you think that you could do easily and it sounds enjoyable to you? Then go for it. Give it a try. Like, nothing's going to hurt. Otherwise, find something that you think that, hey, I could do this. This sounds interesting to me. Because that's the problem of like these fads and all these things. It's like, because everyone's doing it and you see all these success stories, like you want to get on it. But even though you're like, this really doesn't fit into my life and what I'm looking for. So,
Exactly. I love that. That's perfect. So I'll definitely put all of your information in the description. But before I let you go, I do want to touch base on you switched gears a little bit and you became a children's book author. I mean, tell me a little bit about that.
a surprise. So I've always had this crazy like desire to always just do all these things, like this serial entrepreneur mindset. And I have to be careful because it's like you got to focus on one thing, as they say. But I also believe that sometimes when you have different abilities and different talents, that you should go with it. And actually, I didn't even think that I had this in me. This was more of a passion project of me like loving and being obsessed with personal development and just learning about what, that I can actually shift and somewhat control, but reframe my thoughts like three
Right.
years ago, and I'm 37, so do the math there. But like, what? So I went on this journey of personal development a few years ago and learned all this stuff. And I have two daughters, and they obviously struggle with their emotions just like any child does. And one night I felt like I wish there was more books, more resources that taught children, especially girls, because I feel like girls struggle way more with their emotions than boys, just with the girl stuff and the mean girls and all that drama. And I said, you know what? Like, I'd love Dr. Joe and his principles and all of the power of your mind and stuff. And like, I just like was sitting in my bed and I was like, why can't I write it? So I went to like ChatGPT. How do you write a children's book?
Oh
And
my
it just
gosh.
broke down step one, step two, step three. And I was like, look, this is my belief about everything in life. If somebody else has done it, why can't I?
I love
Right?
that.
In this day and age. So I went to work. I started from the first step and, got the idea for the concept, the book, wrote it, hired an editor, hired an illustrator. It was all a passion project that I really wanted to get out into the world and to help other children and parents help teach their children the power of their thoughts. And I think the sooner that you start, the better it is. So, these little kids, like they don't know, and most parents don't even know. So I went to work and I mean, I started this project last August. Obviously, there was some delays, but I just launched, what was it, March? The book is
Mhm.
out. So it was kind of like, and it also was a way to teach my kids entrepreneurship. So we started like a little LLC for them. And
I
who knows, they might
saw that
take it
it's
like
the Holzapfel
the
sisters,
Holsey
right?
Sisters
Yeah.
Media.
Oh,
So,
yeah, I love it.
if they want to like make bath bombs or sell merch or do something on their own when they're 18, I'll hand over the LLC to them and they can learn how to be entrepreneurs if they want, or if not, we can leave it as it is. But it was almost kind of a learning process for them too. So it's like all around, I didn't do it to be like, oh my gosh, I make all this money from the book because royalties are pathetic. It was more of
Yeah.
a passion project and a way to teach them about how to be entrepreneurs.
I love that. So how old are your daughters?
They are, geez, look, look how much you gotta like. They grow so fast, you like forget their age. 6 and 8.
6
So
and
my
8.
youngest,
And the name of the book?
it's the Magic Garden of Thoughts.
I love the concept. I bought a couple of copies for my nieces. I think it's
Thank you.
so important to think about. I never heard of those things when I was young about the power of my thoughts and the power of your
Mhm.
mind. So I loved the concept and I love the book and the illustrations. They're it's obviously your girls and it's
Yeah.
so cute. I loved that you did that. I think that's such it was just a cool thing. It was perfect timing because I put it in my niece's Easter baskets. And do you have any plans for more books, maybe?
Yes, I do. I actually wanted to pivot and do maybe a concept of Christian based books that intertwine like Christianity and mindset because I'm a Christian and we believe in God, and I feel like also there's this like weird energy about, oh, well, this is too woo woo, but when you look at the Bible, like it all comes from the Bible. Like
Mhm.
as a man thinketh, so is he. Like that is manifestation in itself is Christian beliefs and principles. So I'm thinking about tying like, Christian fundamental values with mindset. And kind of my husband was like talking about like, you just need to go like against this woke movement of all this crazy stuff. And like just
Yeah.
like, real things that our children need to learn these values. So there are plans for more, not anytime soon. I'm still trying to figure out like how to get this one consistent. I mean, it's a whole other business and I knew it, but I didn't know it. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
got my business now. I got to think about how to sell this book because after the launch, it's like it doesn't sell itself, right? Marketing is like ongoing. So I'm like, it's a little bit of a pivot in like with my time and everything. But there are plans to kind of in the future to maybe do a series that's more like related. They'll still be the main characters in it, but more because I have so many ideas. When I started this, I wrote like 20 different book ideas.
There's the entrepreneur
Yeah,
spirit.
there's so
Be
many
careful. Be
concepts.
careful. Your cortisol. You don't want your
Right,
cortisol.
right. Well, there's so many concepts of personal development that I feel that children need to learn and
I
that
love it.
are missing out there. So there, to answer your question, yes, not anytime soon, but absolutely.
I love that. So I'm going to link that book down in the description. You guys, if you have kids, it is an excellent book. It's very well illustrated too. I love whoever you got as your illustrator. They did such a good job. It's very colorful, and my nieces loved it. And so I can't wait to see what else you come up with. But thank you so much for joining me today and having this conversation. It's nice to have a conversation with someone in the same space, and we can correlate on so many things. So, and I appreciate just for you being so open and sharing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was great, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.